Hey guys, in this video series, over the course of 13 videos, I'm going to show you elements that you're going to need to use to be able to create a game suitable for the A-Level Digital Technology Unit 2 Controlled Assessment. So I'm going to create a platform game over the 13 videos. There might be things in there you don't use, specifically to do with the live system that I'm going to use. You might want to go with 3 particular lives or 5 lives. I'm going to use a health bar for my health system. So when the character runs out of health, that's it, game over. Okay. You might want to go with a live system, and that's up to you. So let me just give you a bit of a basis about what the game's going to be about. So my game is going to be called Derelict Drift. It is based around a stranded spaceship. You play the playable character will be a spaceman. That spaceman is trying to find parts of the escape pod to repair it so they can escape the ship. The ship is being invaded by aliens. So that's the basis, the basis of my game. Obviously, you've already come up with the ideas for yours, so that's fine. So over the course of the next 13 videos then, I'm going to be covering the following. So I'm going to be covering Sprites and Backgrounds, which is what this video is going to start with, movement and gravity, viewpoints and cameras, platforms, working with platforms, enemies and the way that you move your enemies, a life or a health system, so I'll cover both, room shake, which is an effect that you can apply to the room if something happens. I'm going to look at collectibles and scoring. Game object, so the game object is the object that controls how the game progresses. So it's not just about movement and things like that, it's about when things interact, what happen. We're going to look at creating an intro screen, a win screen, a lose screen, and working with sounds. So that's going to cover the 13 videos. This is not going to be a step-by-step guide. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to create parts of the game, but obviously you developing the game is down to you, because it's no point me showing you how to create a full game step by step, because your game is not going to be the same as my game. Okay, so you might have completely different elements, but the skills you learn you can apply to your own game. So let's then start by looking at sprites. Okay, so at the moment you can see on the screen that I've got just opened up Game Maker. This is the newer version of Game Maker as of February 2026. So I'm going to start by creating a new game, and I'm going to create a blank game. Okay, so my game is going to be called Derelict Drift, and I'm going to save it into a folder. So on my desktop, this is where I'm going to save mine. I'm going to create a new folder for it called Derelict Drift. Okay, and I'm going to open that folder up, select the folder, and let's go. Okay, so you can see straight away that you've got the same screen as you had before. The only difference that I can see is this area here, the assets area. So in the older versions of Game Maker, it created folders for you down the side here for sprites and objects and rooms and so on. It doesn't do that automatically for you in this Game Maker version, so it's going to be up to you to organize your workspace. Okay, so we'll come on to look at that when we start doing some coding, but I want to start just by showing you some stuff with sprites. So I'm going to just create a new sprite, so I just right clicked in that area, creating sprite. Okay, you've got 2 ways of creating, 2 or 3 ways of creating sprites. The first way is the way that you're used to, okay, by editing the image and then drawing using the tools over here. So you draw your shapes and whatever you need to do. Okay, you're all familiar with that. You've all created sprites before, I guess, so I'm not going to cover that. If you want to know how to do that, you can look at my previous video series on the GCSE creating a maze game. Okay, so I'm going to close that down. The first thing I want to show you is how to import a static image. So I can click on, there's 2 ways of doing it. I can either import it directly from here, okay, but I suggest you use the edit image tool again. And if you look at the top, the menu bar up here, when I click edit image, I get different menu options. I've got 3 different menu options that appear. We're going to use the image, okay, and we're going to import an image. So I'm going to import the image, okay. If I go into my assets folder, okay, I've got some assets here. So some of these are strip images, so this is what I mean by a strip image, and others are individual images. So I'm just going to show you how to import an individual image. Okay, so I've got some sprites here. Let's select the skull, for example. I'm going to select the skull, I'm going to open it. Okay, it asks me where do I want to put it in relation to the canvas, and I can resize the canvas as well using this tool. So let's resize the canvas to 256 by 256, and let's go OK. Okay, let's get rid of that blank frame. Okay, so there's my image. That's 256 by 256. So if I come out of that image, if I close it, okay, you can see that I've got my little cursor, my selector here. This is this tells you where everything that happens with that sprite is going to revolve around. So this is in the top left. Generally, you're going to want to have that in the center. So there's 2 ways you can do that. There's using this menu at the top here. I can put it middle center, okay, and just put it there, okay, or I can click and drag. Okay, so if I want to put my center of my cursor anywhere else in the on the image, I can. So I'm just going to put it middle center for now, and if I need to change it at any point, I just come back into the sprite and change it. Again, if you want to change the size of the sprite, so say for example I wanted that 128 by 128, then here I can change the size, and I can change it 128 here. Because it's got a maintain aspect ratio, when I click outside, it changes the other than 128 as well, and I can apply it, and then it resizes the sprite again. Okay, so you can see that that's now got slightly more pixelated around the outside, so that shows you this it's a pixelated image. So I can do that. Okay, I can also import images from a strip. So let's try that. So I'm going to create a sprite again. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to edit my image, I'm going to go onto the image, but this time I'm going to use import a image from a strip. Okay, so if I want to do this, okay, and I come back to my game assets, let's say for example I wanted to use, let's say this astronaut. Okay, so here I can import any of these images that I want by selecting the image along the strip. So I can click and drag the box. So for example I wanted to do this image here. You can see I've got a little square box there. Okay, I can change the width of the frame. So let's type that in. Let's do 70. No, it's nowhere near 70. So let's try 150, 200. Okay, so 200 is getting close, so let's leave it there. The frame height, let's try 200 at the start. Nowhere near. Okay, so I want to try 350. Okay, so from there, I can now use the cursors to make that wider. So I'm happy with that. Okay, so let's say I want there. And now I can make the frame height, I can use the frame height. Okay, like that. So I'm now just going to select this one strip, one sprite off this strip. So when I'm happy, I can convert it. If I want to change the offset, I can. So that's moving the box about itself. If you want to fine tune that as well. Okay, and I'm going to convert it. It says importing a strip image will replace the existing sprite. Yes, I want to proceed. And there it's imported the sprite. Okay, again, if I close this down, I can come in here and I can resize the sprite by clicking on the size tool. Okay, so that's how I use an individual image from a sprite strip. The sprite strips are very handy in the fact that you can use them for animation. So I'm going to show you that very quickly. So if I go back onto here and I create another sprite, okay, I'm going to edit my image again, and this time I'm going to, from my image menu, I'm going to import a strip image. I'm going to use this one this time. Okay, so this is going to be the character that I'm going to use in my game. So this time I'm going to import all of these images. So let's have a go at that. Okay, so that box is way too big now, so you can see this is from my last time that I did it. So let's just take this down to 50 by 50 for now. Okay, so I want to start in the top corner of my strip. Okay, so I want a 0, 0 offset. So what I want to do now is to make sure that I tell it that I want 5 frames, and number of frames per row, I want 5. Okay, so there's my 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got 5 frames in total, and I've got 5 frames on the row. So now it's a case of making sure that these boxes are big enough to cover each of the sprites. So let's try 70. Right, that's too big. So let's take that down, just using the cursor. Okay, so you can see that that's 60. 60 is fine. It's on the edge of the image there, edge of the image there. So let's change the frame height. Okay, and that's about it there. So 60 by 77. So you can see now I've got each of the images has got a box around them. I'm going to convert it. Click yes, and now you can see that I've got 5 frames that have been imported. So if I play that, you can see that I've got a strange walking spaceman. If I drop the properties down here, I can slow this down. So let's bring it down to about 10 frames a second. Okay, so you can see now I've got a walking animation, which is pretty smooth. So that's going to be something I'm going to use in the game. Okay, so I'm done with that. I can resize it here again if I want to. I'm happy with it for now. I probably will resize it later. But one thing I am going to do is make sure that I'm using proper naming conventions. So I'm going to call that SPR for sprite underscore, let's call it player. Okay, you can see then that appears over here. I'm going to remove these other 2 sprites because I'm not going to use these in the game. Okay, so that's how you import a static character. And that's also how you use a strip image for an animation. So the second thing I want to cover in this video is the use of backgrounds on rooms. So I'm going to open up my room, okay, and you can see I've got my tools at the top here. So this allows me to center fit, and I can fit all on the screen. Okay, I can zoom out a little bit just so you can see that that's centered around my my room. So my room dimensions at the moment are 1366 by 768. That is a screen. Okay, I can set that to 1920 by 1080 if I wanted to full HD, but these are the dimensions for my room. Okay, so I don't want to see just one screen for my complete level. I want to be able to see parts of my level as I go through my game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my room bigger. I'm going to leave it at 768 for height, okay, but I'm going to probably treble my my room width. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this to 3567. Okay, and then what you can see then, if I view the whole room now, this is the width of my room. Okay, so I'm only going to be seeing a part of this as I go through my game. So as I'm walking through my maze or through my game world, okay, I might only be able to see a certain part of this level. Okay, but what I will do is use a camera, so as I move, the camera will move with me along through the level. Okay, so how do I put then a sprite in there? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is to make sure that I've got a sprite for it. So I'm going to go back onto my area over here, and I'm going to create a sprite. And I'm going to call this SPR underscore background 1. Okay, because I'm going to have different backgrounds as I go through different levels. So I'm going to import an image for that. So I'm going to come onto my import tool here. This is my background 1 image. Okay, undouble action, that's okay, fine, there's my image. But you can see that my image is too big for my room. Because if you remember, my room was set at 3567 by 768. Okay, so if I put that into my room, it's going to be too big. So I'm going to straight away, I'm going to come onto my resize sprite, and I'm going to change this to my room dimensions, which is 3567. I'm not going to maintain aspect ratio, okay, because it's not going to fit otherwise. 768. Okay, so that is the dimensions of my room, 3567 by 768. I'm going to apply it. Okay, you can see my room's been resized. I've now got new dimensions. Okay, so I'm going to close that down. I'm going to go back onto my room now, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to come onto the background layer. So when we're talking about layers, it's important, and we'll be using this a lot as we go through creating the game. The layers are important, so I'm going to use a background layer. Okay, and on my background layer I am going to import my image. So I'm going to use the sprite. Okay, so where it says no sprite here, I'm going to select that at the side, and I'm going to select my background image for my game. Okay, and that is put my background on for the whole width of the room. Okay, no more. So if I play the game, all you'll see at the moment is the background visible. Okay, but you can see all of it. We don't want that. Okay, so we're going to start by using viewports at some point. Okay, where I can only see a bit of the image, and then as I move through the game, you'll be able to the background will move with the game. Okay, so that's the first video on sprites and backgrounds. Okay, so join me in video 2 where we look at movement and gravity.